Hello, legends. Boy, have I got a guest for you. Chana, Korea's top foreign actor. This guy has been to the bottom and he's come back up to the top. And we're here to talk about all things enlightenment and what is it all about. First, just take a look at this. I'm going to stop it there before I get any more envious. Let's get into it. Ken, how are we doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Chris?
Yes, absolutely delighted. You sent me an email, didn't you? And you said that this is where I am on my journey. I'm seeking the light. I've done this, this, and this. And then you told me your history coming from chronic addiction, which is the same background as mine. And I thought, do you know what? We have got to have a chat because if we can support people out there, I get a lot of messages and emails came from my wonderful viewers, and quite often it's off the kind of, hey Chris, you're this and you're saying that and what you're saying is it, and I'm like, whoa. The answers are in you. In you. I'm just a conduit here, hopefully of the divine, trying to be in service to you, but don't come, I'm a failed human being. I've proved that time and time again. I just happen to have one foot in the light. And so I thought this chat, mate, could really, be a benefit of people. So really good to meet you.
Man, great to meet you too. And that's kind of what I wanted to do as well. I have been smacked over the face time and time again for the last 2.5 years since my awakening started of what I should be truly doing with my soul purpose, right? And that's what I want to embark on your audience. It's why I wrote the book that I just wrote, Enlightenment Express. And it is to help free people from suffering, from their addictions, and give them the exact practical tools to use to get them not only on the path, but if they're already on the path, to get them to free themselves from suffering, to eliminate all the nonsense in their lives, and to get them in alignment, right? And while I'm still on the journey and I am not enlightened yet, I have been in these exalted states of unity consciousness, samadhi consciousness, and we'll get into that and how I got there within weeks of meeting my first guru and transmission, from never meditating, atheist, antinatalist, to then having these mystical states. And now my whole purpose is to become unconditional love. Like, I've made a complete 180, and this is something I want to embark on your listeners as well.
Yes, great start. And we can compare notes on this because a lot of people must be wondering, well, what actually is enlightenment? And I totally get it. I would be frustrated if I didn't know what it was and I hadn't experienced it. So we'll come on and talk about that. So how did somebody from your background, sorry, I'm just moving my things around my screen here. Friends at home, I've got 3 screens on the go, so I can try and show you some of Ken's background or stuff that's relevant to the podcast. Please don't think I'm ignoring my guest. I'm just a one-man band. I'm not at the I'm not at the Joe Rogan stage yet where I can have a Disco Dave in the background there doing all the tech for me. But rural Kentucky, is that where the Kentucky Derby is, or is that a stupid question?
Yeah, no, you got it. The Kentucky Derby. It's one of the few things we're famous for. Kentucky Derby, Kentucky bourbon, horses.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much it. And fried chicken.
Frankie Dettori's made a debut over there.
I don't know that name. Should I?
Yeah, no, he was a very highly successful jockey in this country, Italian descent, became a sort of English, as it were, with this very bizarre northern Italian accent, and he was an incredible rider, and he, I think, like a lot of people that have that genius, crashed on cocaine for a while, and then he made a comeback at sort of, I don't know, he must be over 40, might even be my age, closer on 50. I'm 56, by the way, folks. I'm not trying to say I'm 50. And he went over to America to restart his career, and there was a documentary on the TV about it. And I don't think he won the Kentucky Derby, but he was doing really well.
Oh, interesting. Do you know the name of his horse?
I think it's called Trigger. No, I don't. That's probably too old for our audience. Was it Roy Rogers? His horse was Trigger. That's an American thing.
Yeah, you got me on that one too.
Yeah, no, don't worry.
Yeah.
Don't worry. Let's get back on track because, sorry, I'm aware we time is precious for us. So, yeah, big thing, Ken, I'm big on, because being a veteran, we deal a lot with PTSD.
Yeah.
And what nobody talks about, especially off the back of the Rambo movies and Platoon, which I think was just what I call the cabal, the big dark club, that was their brainwashing society into mass hypnosis of, hey, well, you didn't support the war, why should you? But you've got to support the service men and women,
Yeah.
and very cleverly, they've shifted society. They've indoctrinated society to look at the military machine and see no wrong with it, despite the fact the actual job it really carries out is if you look at the last 20 years, it's just been absolutely sort of awful. And what it's left us with, Ken, is this situation where people now think PTSD is like the Rambo and Platoon movie, that this guy must have seen all this service. And yes, that is true for some individuals. But the one thing that's not being discussed, and this is why I'm going to summit Mount Everest in April, is to raise awareness of the fact many of us had childhood trauma.
Yeah.
And we left the military, and once that protective bubble was gone and we faced, quote unquote, real life in Civilian Street, then all of that trauma manifests. You get that feeling of lack of self-worth that many of us had from relationships with our parents. You start self-medicating and feeling that you're not good enough, and it spirals. And yes, I was in conflict. You can see stuff in combat that's not that affects people differently. But so I'm quite keen to ask you, and sorry, I'm aware I'm talking a lot. I'm just trying to lay the tape.
No, I love it. I love it.
I just wanted to ask you, Ken, what kind of childhood did you have?
Oh, that's a great question. So I had there's PTSD and there's CPTSD, right? Which is complex PTSD. I'm a firm believer that pretty much everyone walking Earth has some form of PTSD. We don't make it through life without emotional scars. Let's be honest. Even those quote unquote vacation lives that they talk about that souls go on, like every person, no matter how awesome, quote unquote, that your life has been, has some form of PTSD. Okay. And mine was filled with extreme fear. So I was the most religious household in a county filled with heroin. Okay. To give you perspective, so in my graduating class, 25% of the girls before they graduated had a child. There were so many children there that we had to put a daycare in at the high school. My sister had a child at 17, my other sister at 18. It's just the way my mother had 3 before 22. So I grew up extremely, extremely Catholic. I was studying to become a priest. Why was I so Catholic? It's not because I love Jesus so much, it's because I was afraid of hell. And I was taught that if you sin with a thought, it's called an intrusive thought. It's a sinful thought. You can go to hell. Okay. So I was trying to get rid of my thoughts. I was trying to not sin. I became a mute for a while. I just did not want to go to hell. All right. And that was extremely traumatic. My parents were very loving parents. They just didn't know any better. You only know what you know. And so I had all this fear inside of me. And it wasn't until my awakening, some 30 odd years later, that all of this came to the surface and that I got to see it for what it really, really is and was. And so it wasn't traumatic in that it was physically abused outside of relentless bullying. It was more of the internal monologue that I had every single day of I was afraid of hell. There was pictures of religious material everywhere in the house. It was nonstop. There's a 3 days of darkness that's going to come whenever the Antichrist comes again. There's going to be 3 days of darkness. That's you're not going to be able to see anything. Demons are going to eat people. This is really what the Catholic Church was teaching, and I believed everything in it. And I'm a firm believer that the Catholic Church, the biggest scandal isn't so much the pedophile stuff, which is really bad. It's the marching of billions of kids into church and saying Santa Claus is not real, but hell is. And you're going to go there more than likely. Like that really fucks with a kid's mind, right? Like imagine that, right? Like it's forever. It's forever. And you're accountable for your sins after the age of 7, which is the age of reason. So that messed me up for years and years and years. Um, and I spent a lot of time escaping that. I was a virgin until I was like 20 or 21. I was really afraid of women. I was afraid of everything. And eventually I went on to become a news reporter because I had this, I want to call people out on their nonsense, right? I loved calling people out on their nonsense. There's two sides to every story. And then eventually I got a message from somebody who she was in Korea. She was somebody from Kentucky that escaped Kentucky. And I said, how are you traveling the world right now? And she said, I just went to Korea. I took some random jobs and I traveled the world. And so I booked a flight. I left my job as a news reporter, and I booked a one-way flight to Korea because I wanted to travel the world. And not long after being there, this Swedish guy, I'm sorry, I'm going off a little bit of tangent from the childhood story. It all feeds into it though. And this random Swedish guy comes up to me at a bar and he says, "Are you an actor?" And I said, "No, but I was a news reporter." And he said, "I want to make you an actor here. You got the look, you're fit. We got a swimming movie coming up next week. Do you want to be in the movie?" Well, hell yeah, I want to be there. I'll be in the movie for sure. So I did that movie. I did a good job apparently. And he said, "I want to be your agent and I want you to be an actor here full time and I will represent you." And after being on a movie set, after being from middle of nowhere, Kentucky, heroin addicted town, right, to like that in the second biggest city in the world, I was in. I was not only in, I was all in. And fast forward 7 years, and I was in over 130 movies, K drama, K pop music videos, billboard ads, commercials, your Samsung, LG, Kia. I was on reality shows. I was the white guy that was in everything. I don't. Have you seen Squid Game by any chance? Or at least know about it?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't watch it avidly. It kind of scared. It's also you get that horrible dubbing with Korean films,
Yeah.
don't you? And it's
Yeah. Yeah. It was as good as can be, but there's a scene at the end of season 1, not to ruin it for everybody. I'm not going to ruin it, don't worry. But there's white people, and if I would have been there for the filming of that, I would have been one of those white people during one of those final scenes. Okay, and I knew all the people in there. I filmed movies with Liam Neeson, et cetera, et cetera. I was living the life. Now, this life came with, as we mentioned before, addiction. Korea is the number one drinking culture in the world, not just in Asia, in the world. And I became a full blown alcoholic. I didn't know it back then. I thought it was just part of the culture. I was just keeping up with the Joneses, but then I was drinking alone. And I also developed a sex addiction because whenever you are starring alongside their versions of Brad Pitt and George Clooney, who are not just famous in Korea, Korean entertainment is the number 2 entertainment in the world. And I developed a sex addiction. It went from a guy that has access and is having sex to a full blown sex addiction. And the difference is, whenever I'd hug a woman, it didn't matter if it was an old lady or a stranger, I was thinking about them naked. I was thinking about their breasts against me. Like, if I didn't get laid, I was furious, right? Absolutely furious. I was ashamed of myself if I went to the bar and didn't get laid. Now, the porn addiction was out of control. Like, that was my everything. It was my everything to get laid. Okay. And it was awful. It was absolutely awful. And the way that it ended, and I'll come to the good side of the story here soon. The way that it ended was I was dating a Korean girl at the height of my fame, and I broke up with this Korean girl. And over in Korea, they have Korean law and they have foreigner law. And foreigners have different laws than Koreans. Like, we can't vote, we can't protest, we can't make posts negating a business. We can't go into business without a Korean partner. And the foreigner law is there's no phone call and there's no lawyer. So I'm on a set filming a movie, and my agent comes up to me and he says, "Hey, Ken, the police are here. Do you deal drugs in South Korea? Do you deal drugs here?" I go, "No." And then out of the back comes 5 undercover police detectives. They slap handcuffs on me. They tie me up in a rope. And then they say, "You have the right to remain silent," et cetera, et cetera. They take me to my hotel room, which they already knew where it was. They raided the hotel room, found no drugs. I wasn't a drug dealer, by the way. They knew where I lived. They were hitting me in the back of the van, the unmarked van, drove me to my place, went into my place, raided my place, found no drugs, threatened to kill my dog if I didn't confess where the drugs were, took me to the police station, threw me into solitary confinement, and they were essentially torturing me until I gave a false confession. I false confessed because I was scared shitless. Eventually, they let me go. They put a ban on my passport for 4 months, and I was scared shitless. I was going to go to prison for 7 years. And then eventually I got a letter in the mail that said you're proven innocent. And they threw me out of the country anyways, kept all of my money. My life savings was in a bank account. They froze all my assets. And at the age of 34, I had to come back to shithole Kentucky again and move back in with my parents with $0, no fame, no women. All of it was gone. And that's when and the PTSD from being tortured, right? And so I tried to kill myself on January 2nd, 2020, and it didn't work. And so I was put into a mental hospital, tried to maintain my life. I didn't know what to do, Chris. I don't know, man. I didn't know what I was doing. Like, what was I supposed to do? I didn't have any connections, and Kentucky's a bad place. Fortunately, somewhere down the line, fast forward a few years of just intense mental suffering. I won't even get into how bad the mental suffering is. I don't think I have to tell you. My awakening began. And maybe this is a good point to stop and see if you have any questions before I start with how the awakening began.
Yeah, I was gonna. They probably threatened to kill your dog because they wanted to eat it, Ken, didn't they?
That's so true.
Sorry, Koreans, but
They're laughing right now. They're laughing.
Yeah, let's keep it lighthearted. Had somebody grassed you up for the cocaine? Someone must have said something to someone, had they?
No, there was no drugs. There was nothing.
Oh,
I didn't have any drugs.
Were they just like hoping to get a bus because you're a celebrity?
Yeah, so they have something called gadogi, which means they have these. You'll notice like celebrity stories when the government does something bad, they have this backup in their back pocket story of celebrities not only to scare the populace, but also to cover up whenever the government does something bad, which is why they'll keep in their back pocket the K-pop celebrities scandal in their back pocket, right? And then they'll just throw that forward whenever some government scandal. It's to cover up the news press, right? And so they needed that, and they also wanted to scare all foreigners in the country with an example. It was news because there's news reporters there as I'm being arrested. There's news reporters like, okay, come on, like, it's a total setup, right? And so that's what they were trying to do with it, and that's why they were so furious that they spent so much time and money on it, and nothing came from it, which is also why they kept doing bad things to me until I confessed something. Funny enough, they have like a 95% conviction rate. It's like same in Japan too, by the way. And I love these countries. There's a reason why I stayed there for 7 years. I love Korea. Japan is still one of my favorite countries in the world. But as far as being a foreigner who's convicted of a crime, yeah, it makes the Western judicial system look pretty darn light, if you know what I mean. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, your story is similar to mine. I came back from Hong Kong. I was doing a lot of drugs over there. I came back chronically mentally unwell. I'd been a kind of minor celebrity. I'm not trying to black cat you or anything. I'm just saying
No, no, please. Yeah.
I was a nightclub doorman in the club land over there, which is quite a small community. Everybody knows each other, and I was I was the doorman on 3 nightclubs, and I was also DJ of the biggest nightclub in southern China at one point.
Nice.
And I'm not saying this to, impress people. It was nothing to do with that. It was that when I got back to the UK and my psychosis kind of fixed itself because the drugs in the UK weren't as strong as the ones in Hong Kong. And I had my dark night of the soul then, which led to my enlightenment. So there's a lesson there for all of us, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Good comes out of bad. But getting back to your story, could we just touch, in Hollywood, you've got all this Illuminati symbolism, and they're always making the one eye, and the
One
celebrities
eye,
are
yeah.
giving the devil's horns, and they've got the checkerboard floor of Freemasonry. They seem to, or duality, it is really. They seem to cram it into every movie. The last film I watched 2 nights ago was made by the Saturn Film Company, which is a cult kind of a link to the occult, you can say. I just wanted to say, and I've got my friend Martin in this country. He's a film director. And he says sometimes you get your actors when you start to take some promo shots of them. And he says they start doing all. He's like, "Oi, fucking stop with that shit." You know what I mean? And I just wondered, is that a thing in Korea, or is it just a different?
I didn't know about any of this stuff until about 3 years ago that you just talked about the one eye and the devil horns. But no, none of that was over there. One of the things that they do have, they have three things. One is the K-pop factories, which is where they sign these slave contracts where from a very young age, when you're not even old enough to sign for you, your parents sign for you, you get put into these buildings and they'll dye your hair blonde. You're the one that learns Chinese. You're the one that learns English, right? And then they mix and match each other, and they study there and they stay there and are not allowed to leave the compound. And that's how they make these K-pop groups. They give them a name, they throw them out to these festivals. If it doesn't work, you come back and they reshuffle, and they're hoping that one of them makes it. They don't. 99.9% of them don't. They waste a lot of money trying to do it, but that's the fame. That's their level of fame. The ones that do make it, they have to get what's called a sponsor. And a sponsor is somebody you have to sleep with. It's essentially a guy that just has connections in the music industry, and you have to sleep with that guy. And that guy's wife is very aware of it. Like they're not like oblivious to it. And so you have to have a sponsor. It's extremely corrupt. There's been multiple celebrities that have killed themselves, and then with their suicide note, they talk about the sponsors and the K-pop factories and how brutal the industry really is. So there's not really any Satanism that I could see. It's more just like a big sex cult. It's awful. It's extremely patriarchal and demeaning, and it was extremely dark. I saw people die on set, and then they would cover, Samsung would cover it up. Like it was, if I didn't want fame so much and getting laid so much, I would have actually said something about all of this. I actually did an expose when I got back to America and I was thrown out of the country and all that. I didn't care anymore. I did an expose for the Korea Times where they came over and filmed me and several other actors that left Korea, talking about the dark side of the industry from our perspective as foreigners. Yeah, no sadism from what I could see, but still really awful. I just don't think you can get to those levels of entertainment in any country and not have some tomfoolery that's happening, right?
Yeah, I mean, you said it yourself there. It might not seem like satanic or demonic, as in a kind of orchestrated sense, but it's still energy harvesting, isn't it? You're taking vulnerable young people that are desperate for fame. You're making them do stuff that, in hindsight, when they look back, unless they become depraved and sick themselves, they're going to look back and think, "Oh my God, I was hugely taken advantage of." It's interesting you say about the K-pop factory. Is it's the same in publishing. So I've written a few books now. Well, people can see up there, my books are on the screen. And what these big publishing companies will do is they'll buy up all the new authors' books. They'll give them a contract, and you think, "Oh wow, I've made it," And what they do is they put the books out. They just do one print run, and they know that, say, out of every 1,000 books they sign up, they're going to get one J.K. Rowling or one Stephen
Yeah.
King, and that one book will more than pay for all those other contracts, that all the other what do you call it, the advances that they've paid on all those other contracts. And so there you are as an author. You've put your life and soul into this manuscript, and it's gone to to an evil organization that's literally knows it's going to fail, or statistically, 999 of those books will fail, and one will, some of them will make some money, of course, and maybe I'm just chucking out. I'm guessing at statistics here, so yeah, I totally get it. What I want to come on to is, so you were self-medicating with alcohol, I'm guessing, when you came back to America. You must have been in a really dark place.
Yeah, I didn't. The moment I got back to America, my life was over. And I was so depressed. I was like catatonically depressed that I said I'm not gonna drink. I wasn't watching TV. Because TV reminded me of my job. So I was envious. So I couldn't do that. Couldn't go on social media because I saw all my friends that were still famous, and that made me envious, right? And I was just filled with all these attachments, and alcohol reminded me of Korea. And so it was worse for me to drink. And so I became just a void, an absolute void. And it wasn't, honestly, like, it all really didn't change until, about, I don't know, it's like 3 or 4 years later, when my sister died of a heroin overdose. My brother had died from an opiate overdose. That was an accidental one. And then my sister was a heroin addict for, I don't know, maybe 15 years of her life. Extremely traumatic childhood. Heroin's just everywhere where I come from. At her funeral, I was so depressed. I said, I need a way to fix my brain. I'm tired of being this depressed all of the time. And so the only spiritual person that I knew, and I wasn't spiritual, I was an antinatalist atheist, right? Just done with life. And I said, his name's Chris. I said, "Hey, Chris, I want to do these psychedelics that you keep telling me about, because I'm just going to throw a bunch at it and see what happens." So he invited me up to Canada. I went to Canada, and he had to work, but he said, "My friend will guide you." He's guided other people. So I lay down on this couch, did MDMA and mushrooms filled with unconditional love and spiritual check-in. I saw the billions of souls that are waiting to incarnate here. Is the hardest place to incarnate in the entire universe, or one of the at least. I met my sister's spirit. And down here, she was my sister, the heroin addict. Up there, it was my sister, the heroin addict. Oh my God. Like she went through that. She kind of knew with this whole blueprint of what was going to happen. She couldn't overcome the addiction, but she took that on, the Navy SEAL among Navy SEALs, to try to overcome the hardest addiction on the hardest planet to incarnate on in the known universe. And it was amazing. I came back into my body and I said, Chris, what the hell was that? And then he started to explain to me non-duality. And then my life forever changed after that. He gave me books. I read The Power of Now, which is everybody's, first kick, right? Is The Power of Now. I didn't really get it. So that didn't really do anything for me. It wasn't until he said, listen, these are all just concepts. You need to do a meditation with this guy named Gareth. He's in Brahmin consciousness. Just do a meditation with him. He can transmit his energy into you even over Zoom. Still, the incredulous news reporter that I was said, okay, fine, I'll do it. It was a silent meditation. And he says at the very beginning, I'm going to spend 2 minutes on each of you. And when I get to your screen, you're going to know, you'll know. I was like, okay, whatever, dude. Okay. I, I don't meditate or whatever. I'll close my eyes. Thoughts, 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 thoughts. Oh my God. This visual flickers everywhere.
Hello, friends. Sorry about that. We had a slight technical glitch, so we've rearranged things. Ken, fascinating story, harrowing. I think everyone listening will probably really feel for you there, brother. You've come through a lot. Before we got interrupted by tech, you were saying you'd started to walk the enlightened path, and your friend had recommended a guru who you could do some work with, and his energy could almost feed you. That's what it sounded like?
Yeah, you got it. That's exactly right.
Nourish you.
Nourish me. He calls it the sap force. He's in Brahmin consciousness, and what he does is he transmits the energy into you. It works behind the scenes, and his specialty is it expands your consciousness very, very rapidly. Like he calls it a Ferrari. It's like a Ferrari for consciousness. And so I went. It's my first meditation ever. Never meditated, and I'm sitting there, silent meditation, and he says, I'm going to spend 2 minutes on each of you. Close your eyes. You're going to know when I'm on you. I still didn't believe him. Right around the 40-minute mark, my eyes are closed. This bright white light comes pouring into my system. My thoughts start disappearing into the background. I'm 2.5 hours in to my first meditation ever, and thoughts are disappearing. And this being, I don't know what it was. I still don't know to this day. I guess it was kind of the shape of an Arcturian. I don't know. It places 3 fingers into my brain and it starts healing my brain. Love starts pouring into me. And then I'm like, oh my God, I got to meet this guy. I pull up my laptop to book his retreat. I'm like, I have to go to this guy's retreat. Whoever this is, he has the answers. And there are 3 fingerprints on my laptop that stayed there for 8 hours. I messaged him after I signed up for the retreat and I said, are you an alien? Like, who are you? And he's laughing. He goes, no, I'm not an alien. I don't know what that was, but it seems like the divine used something to get you on the path. So welcome to the path, brother. And that felt great. I think you kind of know what he was saying, right? You kind of get it, right? Yeah. I did not still know back then. So then I flew to Ireland to go to his retreat, silent meditation retreat. And it's amazing. And this is something that I lay out in the book. The whole point of my book is that I want people that are at the beginning of the path or even in the middle of the path to awaken as fast as possible and to avoid any of the pitfalls that I had come across. And, I reached these higher states of consciousness because of transmissions from gurus. And this is not talked about hardly anywhere. Like when you pick up The Power Now by Eckhart Tolle, it's just a lot of concepts to the finite mind, right? But I'm like so many people are like, wow, how do I do like how? You're just telling me these things, but what's the exact steps that I need to take? And that's what I wrote the whole book for, is like the exact things you need to do to wake up effectively, safely, and the fastest ever in the history of mankind. And it's through a lot of it is through Zoom transmissions from highly enlightened people that can transmit their energies. And that's exactly how I've reached exalted states. And when I went to his retreat for 7 days, there was 30 people, and I was surrounded by other enlightened people, all transmitting energies. Just being in that presence, just it took me from a really dense, depressed person. It was just slowly cracking me open, cracking, and then suddenly my Kundalini awakens, which I did not know what that was at the time. And then 6 weeks after the meditation retreat, I hit samadhi consciousness. And I guess you're familiar with samadhi, and I don't know.
Samadhi consciousness, is that like Buddhic, like you've got there sort of thing?
Yeah, it's similar to Buddhahood in that there's two different kinds: nirvikapa samadhi and supakapa samadhi. One is the ego's gone, which is nirvikapa, but mine was supakapa, where you still have a hint of the ego, but you become essentially one with everything, and you get downloads from the higher self about what life is. You are all of awareness. You are pure awareness. And it was like someone had zipped down the center of me, peeled away the old me, and the higher self, the true being came forward. And it lasted for an hour. And then I was all in after that. And since then, I've befriended 24 modern day ascended masters. And they've all transmitted their energies into me. I've trained under them, and I have learned a profound amount from them. And I've overcome all of my addictions as a result of it. Well, that's not true. I still got one addiction that's still left, but I don't smoke anymore. Not even an inkling to want to drink. I was able to cure a lot of my traumas. Like talk therapy was never going to do it. Like I'm not bashing talk therapy, but when I'm one finite mind that's researched and studied other finite research, a lot of things come from past life influences, and a lot of things you don't even know about, right? You can't see in your energy bodies, right? And the only people that can are these highly trained, enlightened people with certain CDs and X-Men powers that can literally go in and remove that, right? Like remove this and remove that. And I cannot tell you how much I've changed as a result of all this, right? It's just the fact this isn't on the front page. Well, I think we both know why it's not on the front page of the New York Times, right? But like this is it, this is to me, this is the answer. My purpose was revealed to me. Traumas were taken away, fears were taken away. Like one time, Eva, her name's Eva, she went in and she says, I can see that you drowned in a previous life, and you're afraid of are you afraid of open water? And I said, yeah, every time I'm in open water, I get a panic attack. She literally goes in, removes it from me, and I'm no longer afraid of open water. Like there's a lot of that in our systems that nobody talks about. Have you ever had like a transmission, Chris, like any type of energetic work of this level before?
No, Ken, I'll be honest, this is all kind of like new to me.
Mm.
I am aware, I've had guests on the show that profess to remove like energy parasites from people. I'm very much like a one-man band. I've sort of steered my own ship to where I am. Obviously, when I listen to Eckhart Tolle, it makes a huge amount of sense. Because to walk the path, you have to do the things. I talk about this almost every time I do a live stream. I talk about, this isn't just something you can't just watch YouTube videos. This doesn't. What you're essentially doing is changing your biochemical makeup so that you resonate with the frequency of the universe rather than being trapped in this separate little box, which is called, being in the matrix or unenlightened consciousness. And as a result, I myself got to, when you said samadhi consciousness, like I knew immediately what you're talking about. I might not know the word, but you mean that feeling when of oneness, when you overcome the duality and you realize, fucking hell, it's so it's so fucking special, and I'm acutely aware there'll be people listening now that are possibly frustrated or even angry, and I totally get it. But what I would say is, you're trying too hard. I think a lot of people think that enlightenment is some kind of, it's such a difficult one, Ken. This is for other people, I mean, and I get it. And I can only tell people my story is that you have to heal your soul. That's your starting point. You have to think, do you know what? There was this kid, or you're a younger version of you, that went through a lot of shit. Much of it was horrible, whether it's addiction like you've been through, or people trying to take advantage of you, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, or sexual abuse when you were younger. And it means you grow up with this permanent feeling of flight, fight, or freeze mode, that anything that comes at you has the potential to trigger you. This is why, I remember at school, I was late. Our Cub Scouts were playing a football match, and I was a valued member of the Cubs and the team. But because my parents always made me do stuff on my own, no one ever come and took my hand as a 5 or 6 year old and said, "Come on, Chris, let's get you to the football match." So instead, I'm there, I'm on my own. I see the car leaving the Cub hut, and I'm not in it. And all the Cubs are in it. Back in those days, Ken, we chucked as many kids in a car as you could squeeze in. There was none of this.
My days too.
No health and safety stuff.
Yeah,
and I'm looking at all the Cubs crammed into this car, and they're all excited. And I didn't have it in me. I didn't have the emotional and physical mechanism to run across that road and go, "Whoa, wait for me," because I felt so inadequate and unimportant, And anyway,
I feel you.
Quick story short, because I'm aware you're here to chat, but then also this is a conversation. Friends at home, this is a conversation. And between us, we want to be in service to you and help you look at both of our stories and swap notes. But my one, and my long-term listeners, or anyone that's read my book, 40 Nights, which is the story of my recovery, if I use a cliche word, as opposed to Eat and Smoke, which was in Hong Kong. Well, that was my meeting my nemesis, crystal meth. And I got to such that dark point you were saying. I was so depressed having to leave Asia. Coming back to England, I was no longer a Marine Commando. I no longer had the biggest business in the Asia Pacific for Quorum International. All of that was gone. I was no longer the big, handsome doorman on the nightclubs that girls would come up and, take me back to a hotel, and the blokes would come up and give me $100. All of that had gone. In Hong Kong, you probably experienced this too, Ken. It was 24/7. If I woke up at 5 a.m. and I wanted to go down to my favorite nightclub, I can guarantee I know who's all going to be in there, who's got the drugs. The manager of the bar was an ex-soldier. We got on really well. I never paid for my beer in there, which is something I've never seen in the UK. All my beers were bought for me. Anyway, I got so dark, I kept chasing that high, chasing trying to bury that trauma. And eventually one day I couldn't go any lower. I physically was starving, hungry, freezing cold. My house was absolutely trashed to the point that anyone who's seen the film Trainspotting will get what I'm saying, right?
Oh yeah, wow.
And in the midst of what must have been nervous breakdown number 3, 4, 5, or 6 at that point, I cried so fucking hard, shivering, starving on the floor, that I started to think of that little kid, the little me. And I felt sorry for him, Ken, He didn't deserve to end up the way that I'd ended up. It wasn't his fucking fault. It wasn't his fault that complete strangers in the 70s would come up and smack you round the head, and you wouldn't know why. You wouldn't know what you'd done. It was like normal. It was okay. Any adult could abuse a child back then. And I know a lot of people listening will be, hang on, I didn't experience that, Chris. Yeah, of course. I hope you had a wonderful childhood. I didn't have that one, I had a very, violent, terrifying, yada, 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 And in that moment, Ken, crying there on the floor, I couldn't cry any harder of where's it all gone? What have I done to myself? What have I done to myself? I've just become like this, just on the complete opposite side of what I used to be. Okay, I used to be a train killer, driving a flashy BMW and having and all that materialistic bollocks, right?
Yeah.
But at least I had something, right? Now, I had nothing. I was emaciated. I had track marks all up my arm. It was just... And in that moment, I thought, hang on, Chris, who's going to look after that little kid? Who's going to start you can blame all your childhood, all you like, but you know what? You're the one assaulting him now by shoving them bloody needles in his arms up to 20 times a day. It's you, mate. What are you going to do? You're going to put your money where your mouth is and be that brave commando that you are, that does stuff that makes other people like baffled. And I still do to this day, Ken. If I say I'm going to run 1,000 miles the length of the country, I just go and do it. If I say I'm going to run across the desert, I just go and do it. If I say I'm going to row across the Atlantic Ocean, I just go and do it. And it baffles people. A lot of people think I'm like blasé, but they don't understand is, you've got to be true to yourself. You've got to be true to the divinity that's within you, the universe inside you. Otherwise, you're delusional and you're kidding yourself. And so I said, right, there's a few things need to happen here. I was actually too ashamed to go out of the house, and the irony was, the reason was all the kids were playing football in my street and they freaking loved me, Ken. Because I was the only adult that gave them the time of day. I was the only adult that would go out and play football. I used to have this shopping trolley that I found in the river, and I'd cut the basket off it to just leave the wheelie frame. And the kids would put their roller skates on, hold on to it. I'd tie it to my bike, and we'd bomb up and down the road, right? And all I knew all the parents, and they loved it. They loved a lot of them were single parents, because the estate that I lived on, the council had bought a lot of properties to rent out for our, I don't want to say single parent problem, that sounds horrible, but the issue. And so a lot of them didn't have fathers on the scene. So I was like I was the guy that fixed the bicycles and all this stuff. And yet, being this kind, loving person that I tried to be, I'd done this to myself at the same time, Anyway,
yeah.
Cut a long story short, in that moment, I said, right, are we grateful for this life, Chris, or are we not? It's a simple question. It's a yes or no. Lots of my mates were dead by this time in the Marines. That just happens a lot. Died in horrific circumstances. What would they give to be here now? They would give anything.
Yeah.
And if you said to them, look, you can come back again and be alive, oh, but by the way, you're not allowed to stick drugs in your arm 20 times a day, what would they say? They say, no problem. Where do I sign? You know?
Yeah.
And what
Right.
am I doing with this beautiful life when they're dead? You know? And I'm squandering it. I'm ignoring the beauty, the divinity that is in all of us, this gift. And so I said, right, let's start being grateful for every single freaking day. Let's throw open the curtains in the morning and say, morning world, thank you so much for having me. You know, and then I'll go about my day and it'll be my day, and I'm not living up to anyone else's expectations. I don't care if you've got a Ferrari and a harem of Swedish nurses, right? That's your bullshit. I don't. You're probably the most unhappiest person on the planet, right? I want to be able to sit in the garden with a cup of tea instead of a bag of gear and feel that sun on my face and just think, thank you, God. Thank you so fucking much, you know. And what happened is I decided, let me forgive all those people in the past, because do you know what? When I heard their stories, it fucking all... I don't really cry, Ken, but, you know, not in general, not when I'm not on a nervous breakdown from chronic drug addiction. But hearing their stories, it whatever the closest thing to being crying is, you know, the abuses that some of our parents' generation went through, and it was quite normal then. We, you know, not knowing their daddies went off to war, ignored them because they was the sergeant major in the unit and they was out with the boys all the time, and the army was there, you know, and then they get killed in something like the Falklands War or Northern Ireland. You know, one of my mates' dad was blown up, his car was, and then you're like, then you can see the intergenerational trauma and the abuses coming down through and it's got to stop. And it stops when you forgive them and you empathize with what they went through and see that their behavior to you was just a reflection of the chronic inner pain that they're getting. And do you know what? Be grateful you've had some tough experiences, because you can take that forward and be an education for other people. And so I healed the past. I said it no longer exists for me. Just the happy memories. The rest of it's gone. I've got the now, and I'm not going to squander it. And the third thing I did, so I left the past behind. I decided to be grateful, and I took action. If you take action, God's up there, well, God's inside you, looking at you, going, just take a bit of action. That's all you got to do. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Stop being a victim. You're not a victim. You have the divinity inside you. Start releasing it, and you take action, and boom, your life changes. And my action was simply cut down on the gear. Don't spend all your money on it, Chris. I was never a dealer either, Ken. I would have been crap. I would have got arrested. So I only had what I could afford, which wasn't a lot when you're on benefits. And when it was gone, I had this horrible depression for the rest of the fortnight until I got me money again. I thought, do you know what, Chris? Just spend 10 quid, £10. That's it. Don't spend, you know. And when it's gone, it's gone. All right, okay? So I went through the rigmarole. You know what it's like. They call it acting out, don't they? The excitement of calling the dealer. And I used to go to the roughest pub in Plymouth to get my stuff. And I'd cycle down there on my bike, you know, blitzing through all the red traffic lights. I was just... Anyway, I'd get my £10 bag. And when it was gone, it was gone. I would crash. I would wake up, throw open the curtains and say, morning world, thank you so much for this life. And when I did that for the first time, I turned to go and make a cup of tea. Something that before was like a chore. You know, I'd rather have the drugs, to be honest. And now the simple act of treating myself to something that wasn't the most devastating substance known to man, crystal meth, or amphetamine in this country. And as I turned to make that cup of tea, Ken, the light just went like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I knew I was never going to be alone ever again,
I love this,
you know.
man. This is
And
great.
I knew that we are divine, and that had been cut off from us by this absolute crap called life, where people are just so indoctrinated and brainwashed they become fear-laden robots. You know, we saw that with all that medical narrative, and I'm not criticizing people. I get it. I used to be that person. You know, I thought doing a job where you went and killed people was like a really cool thing to do. That's how far away from the truth my life, you know, I was a dangerous person, you know, or potentially. And that light has never left me. And very occasionally I find myself getting a bit stressed, or I wake up and life isn't the way that I want it to be. And I'm like, whoa, Tiger, stop that. Stop. You ain't going back into the matrix. You can't. You know the truth. You quieten everything down. Past doesn't exist. Future doesn't exist.
That's
You
right.
be grateful for this moment. And because I've made all the changes in my diet, so my body's always nice and pH balanced. So I'm a buzzing crystal. I eat, you know, only electrolytes. I only eat vegetables. I'm not saying everyone has to. That I just found that's the best way for me to maintain peak health and fitness. And as a result, I just have to go like that now.
Yeah.
And everything in my body just starts tingling with that beautiful resonance of tuning into the universe. My pineal gland kicks in, which it will only do when your eyes are shut. The crystal drops away because that's all just an illusionary bollocks. That's all gone. And I just become universal consciousness, the samadhi as you refer to it. That's it. And I know in this moment, I've been here forever. The energy's been here forever. It will
It's
be here forever. It
never
cannot
born and will never
die.
die. Yeah.
Therefore, I am that energy just experiencing itself in this little body for a temporary period. I'll go back to the energy, and that is my job. You know, that's my primary role in that life. And that makes it much better to deal with bereavement, because we can't go anywhere. Secondly, you can't afford to be depressed. So you kiss someone goodbye, thank them for their input in your life and the happy memories, and then you get out there and you smash it. You know, you don't look back. And that's my journey, Ken. So when I hear people that have done it in a more kind of constructed fashion and have actually put effort in, because, you know, I just kind of like stopped doing things rather than did do things, if that makes sense. Or
Yeah, it's addition by subtraction. Yeah.
yeah, you know, I stopped thinking about the past. I stopped not being grateful. I stopped the addictive, you know, the taking drugs and feeding the addiction. And I stopped not healing the addiction. Instead, I looked at my life and thought, do you know what? I'm actually grateful I had a tough childhood. It's given me everything. It's literally brought everything by embracing it rather than seeing it as a negative. You know, I'd just tell anyone, come and meet my kid. You come and meet my kid, you'll be like, fucking hell, Chris. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's mad, isn't it? You know, it's what have I done to deserve this? Other than, you know, and I shy away, Ken, from using terms like God and this too much, because I don't want people to listen to me and think that I'm talking about religion.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, or that I'm a Bible basher. I love the Bible. It's the best book on the planet. But you've got to decode it as allegory. You know, you've got to decode the allegory that's in there. You know,
That's right.
you know, bread from heaven is your you know, your prana, your chi, your energy. Fish, it's not an animal in the sea. It stands for wisdom. You know, Joseph and Mary coming down to Bethlehem, the house of bread, is a male, masculine energy and feminine energy coming together to produce the bread, which is the, what did we say that was? Your enlightened consciousness. And so, sorry, I did talk a lot there, but I thought we could kind of juxtapose both our journeys. So things that have helped me on the way massively was getting into scripture. I listened to a channel by a chap that's become a friend of mine called John St. Julian, and he really helped me understand, Jesus walking on water isn't some guy that's good at water skiing,
Yeah.
That's when you get control of your pineal gland, your modern day Jesus. Moses was the old pineal gland, Old Testament. When you get a control, when you overcome your emotion, the water's calm. And when you cross water, it's symbolic of higher consciousness, because when you start to live life through your pineal gland rather than your emotions and your senses, everything calms down. And therefore, you calm the storm. And when are you ever going to hear what I just said in church? And no disrespect to people that go to church. I totally get going to community every week and singing lovely songs. I totally get why people do that. Jesus is my hero. If Yeshua ever existed, he came to me it wasn't a vision, Ken. I just, at my lowest point, when I was building up to the moment I told you about, I just looked down at the floor one day and I could just see Jesus staring up at me with all the blood dripping down his forehead. And I thought, fuck me, mate. You can be the nicest, kindest, most loving guy on the planet, can't you? And they'll still come for you.
Still crucify you.
They'll still come for you. And I've had a taste of that, When you experience addiction, everyone leaves your life. Everyone.
That's right.
And I'm not saying, that they shouldn't. It's a tough thing for everyone to go through, but it's when people stick the knife in and have no understanding of why you've ended up like that. And so I totally get, it's lovely to have a best friend called Jesus. I get that. I used to drive around. I had a proper clout nail, those ones and I had it shoved into the dashboard of my car, and people would get in the car and they'd say, Chris, what's the nail for? It's just a reminder my best friend loves me. And they'd be like, oh, right. But here's the thing. I know that to truly love Christ means embracing your Christ consciousness, because
that's exactly right.
If there ever was a guy that died, that's what he died to leave you with.
You get it.
And when I see people, they're so like happy and proud that I just go to church, and it's bless them, Father, for they know not what they do.
And they don't have a visceral experience, a lot of them. And this was me for the longest time. Like I said, I was more afraid of hell than I was of loving Christ. I didn't actually love him. How could I love some imaginary, quote unquote, imaginary person that's invisible that I've never met before, right? It wasn't until my awakening when I myself had Christ downloads coming into me. And it's not saying that Christ is the only one. I had Kali, Shiva, I had all these downloads, right? It just so happens to be the most powerful one was the Christ consciousness that came into me, right? And so I love your story, and I love the way you're explaining it, because I'm in alignment with 100% of what you just said. And I want to speak briefly on one thing that you mentioned about your suffering at your lowest point. 24 modern day ascended masters that I've been trading under and befriending and getting transmissions from. Okay. And one of the most common things that they all said is the path of suffering, or of surrender. Okay. You have to surrender. And what is the most opportune time to surrender? Every single time to have it deep in your bones is when you're at your lowest of lowest points. And my favorite mentor, Barry, who I'm very, very, very close with, who's by far the most enlightened person that I've ever met. And that's saying a lot. And he says that suffering isn't an obstacle; it's a prerequisite for enlightenment. Adyashanti says something very similar. He says that oftentimes, probably about 99% of the time, people come towards enlightenment and the highest path in spirituality in dire suffering. Dire suffering. For me, it was literally having everything ripped out from me. Suicidal. Like, I mean, you're just like, what else is there? That just, and when you hit that really deep inside of you, something snaps, right? Oftentimes, something snaps. It could be instantaneous liberation, or it could just be it exposes you to something more. I also don't say God. I say the larger consciousness system, which is a term from enlightened NASA physicist Tom Campbell, who has tested spirituality like a physics experiment. He's been out of body 10,000 times, been to many, many different virtual realities. And he wrote a book called My Big Toe, TOE, Theory of Everything. And in order to eliminate any religious dogma, he calls it the larger consciousness system, the LCS. And I like that a lot. And it's an information system. It's always fighting entropy. The LCS is a growing entity, as you can think of it, right? And entropy is when chaos comes in, right? That's when entropy kicks in. And we live in a love, fear, duality universe where love is the ultimate thing, right? It beats fear every single time. That's in all of the 10,000 realities that he's been to. And that also applies to us in our lives. And when you go through your suffering and I go through mine, and we still come out the other end choosing love, that's when things start to get better. So when you tell me the story of all the suffering you've been through, it is so similar to the extreme suffering that the enlightened ones that I've been training under and I've been with, that they've been through. I have yet to meet one that had an easy road. Listen, we all don't have easy roads, but it seems to be this prerequisite. And so I'm saying to your listeners, like, if you're going through some shit right now, or you have been, you're so much closer than a celebrity or somebody that's got wealth. Like, you're really close. You're so close. It is a gift, like you said. Like, you were able to, that moment when your heart expanded, right? I know what you're talking about. Like, it just, this energy just, wow, my God. And it only comes from that deep, deep, deep place. And it's not something you can get conceptually. It's not something you read in Power Now. It has to come experientially, right? It absolutely does.
Ken,
You know what I'm talking about.
I want to just jump in here and say, you said something to me earlier. You asked me, are you enlightened? Are you enlightened? And this is someone left a comment on one of my videos and they went, ha, if you're enlightened, you wouldn't tell people. I said, so if I'm a plumber, what? I don't tell people then. How do I get any?
Yeah.
How do I, how do I help people and how do I get work? Because I'm a life coach.
Yeah, right.
And I think that, I think people really struggle with understanding what ego is,
Yeah.
and we all have it. That's undeniably. But when I get out and smash life, that's not because I want to show. There was a time in my life I'd only do things if I not could brag, but if it would like add to my resume after, like, hey, and that's why I traveled 86 countries on all 7 continents. Well, I'd been a freaking drug addict, for Christ's sake. Everyone hated, society hated me, and I had to come back and say, hey, you can all hate me as much as you like, but I've lived this incredible life. So what does that kind of say? It's all silly stuff. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, yes, I totally get that to people, depending on where they are on their journey, it can sound a bit arrogant having someone say that they're enlightened, because you think, well, surely like modesty and humble and...
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. The only reason I say that, Ken, is just because I am. I told you my story.
Yeah.
I told you the story at which I saw an angel being angle, angle being angle of photons that come from source, from the sun, because everything is energy. Those photons are packets of information, and if you lay yourself open, the information goes in, your pineal receives it, your brain flattens that flattens that energy curve, that frequency into matter, into physical action. That's like how this thing works. That means that you understand how to be enlightened. That's it. It's not like a badge of honor. It doesn't make you better than people. If anything, it makes you realize we are all one. That's it. Right. We're one. We're one consciousness. So when you said to me earlier, you didn't think you were at this stage on the journey, I just want to explore, why don't you think you are where I am? Because it sounds like we've been. And what are you expecting when you get where I am, or perceive where I am?
Wow, that is a really good question. Huh. I've never actually really thought about it like that before, because I've had the same experiences. I guess it's the stabilization in it, right? So that first guy that on the Zoom call, Gareth in Ireland, that transmitted his energies into me. One of the things that he said is that on his path to Brahman consciousness, you get these pockets of true beingness, I amness, samadhi, unity consciousness, and your nervous system can only handle so much. Okay. And I remember what samadhi was like for an hour, because I was definitely in it for an hour, and then it came out of it. I was in unity consciousness for about 45 minutes one time, half an hour another time. And so I know what it's like to ebb and flow in it. But I'm not stabilized in it. Or maybe, I mean, I'm very open to being wrong here, because I mean I don't know.
Okay, let me come in and support you a bit here then, Ken, because do you realize there is only the one?
Yeah.
You're not you and I'm not me. We're just universe manifest having a divine experience. Some people get that. Some people live their whole life. If Gospel according to Thomas, wonderful little allegory in it. The woman comes home from the market with a shopping bag. It's full of goods. She doesn't know there's a hole in the bottom. By the time she gets home, it's all gone. Right? Simple allegory there is, if you don't realize what you've got, that divine is within you, you live your whole life and you have nothing. This is what Jesus said. If you have a little, you'll have everything, but if you have none, you'll have nothing. It's just talking about, once you embrace the light, you have it. You just got to get a little bit of it to start with. Boom. So let's do a quick fire questions. Do you realize that we're oneness?
Yes.
Do you, even though we're not all, we're only human and we do get ratty with people, do you realize that you should be on good terms with all people?
Yeah, absolutely.
Even like someone's pissed me off this morning, but I still love the guy. And I get that he's in a very different place to where I am. Do you realize that there is only the now? That history is great for like telling the human story and such, and fascinating to learn, but essentially everything happens like in this pinprick now. All of our world is like within us now, isn't it? You can't like go to the future and go, hang on, I'm just going to go back to it's everything's happening now, isn't it?
Right. That's exactly right.
Our universes are unfolding from a point within us. Okay, you don't have to like kind of like get this, but you have to sort of go, yeah, I can appreciate the concept. You know what I mean? And it's not necessarily true, but do you realize that our woes in life, our addictions, our anger, our bad behaviors, our emotions, are often, if not for the most part, representative of our unhealed self.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
Oh
if
my
I go
God,
out in 5 minutes and I want to order a double Big Mac and a shake and fries, and Chris, what are you doing, man? You don't eat that shit. Hang on. I'm stressed, aren't I? I'm self-medicating with food. I'm trying to take my mind off the stress. The stress is born out of my childhood experience. The experiences that I perceive I'm going to fail because I've got all this workload coming in and I haven't managed it properly. And as such, I'm starting to feel like a failure, that I'm going to let people down. And it's making me feel like that little, whoa, stop. In that situation, you already said you realize you got to go, whoa, God, come out of me and help me out here. Oh yeah, everything's perfect, isn't it? I forgot that. How silly, you've got that, Ken, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The final thing I'd say is with respect to the big bonanza, the party piece, it's twofold. It's that beautiful feeling of well-being and lightness and connection with everything that you mentioned, that samadhi consciousness. I get that probably on the 6th day of a water fast. Oh my God, I'm in freaking heaven, Ken. I get it. I totally get divine consciousness. 6 days, I've got no crap food in my stomach. My body's not using loads of energy to digest, steaks and chips, and no, that energy is just flowing straight through my endocrine glands. They're producing the chemicals that they should, because my body's all nice and detoxed and I'm not toxic with acid. So my battery is just, it's like I'm like a generator. I'm buzzing,
That's it.
and I get it, right? That's one way of realizing your enlightenment. Another way, and I'm not saying this is limited, this just another example, is when you realize the importance of just shutting your eyes, deep breath, let it all out. I've shut the noise off, I've shut the past off, I've shut the future, I've shut my thoughts. I've literally just connected to the divine energy, because that is all I am. And as a result, my pineal gland kicks in. It's photosensitive, so this is why we shut our eyes. And I get this nice, gentle, buzzy feeling flowing around my body, like a slight electrical charge, in a beautiful way. The thing that we used to pay money back in the dance days when we bought our ecstasy, like, you now get for free. No, it's nothing as strong as pills or anything, folks. Don't be looking for that experience. You won't. It's just a subtle feeling of well-being. And sometimes when I'm in people's company, if they're right and they're good for me, this energy just becomes really powerful, to a point where my whole body is just flushing up and down with this incredible feeling of being divine consciousness. And so I put it to you, Ken, I think you're already there, brother. That there's nothing more to discover. I think at some point we can keep learning, but we got to stop searching, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And realize, oh my God, I'm here. I've just got to choose to be. And when I start to lose it, what am I doing wrong? I'm focusing on the material. I'm gone into ego mode. I've been shouty with people. I'm thinking about junk food for tea, when really I need to keep my diet on track. And that's all it is. And I call it spiritual battle, because Jesus Christ, there's a battle in this house, I tell you. every time I look at I eat plants. My family eats everything. Sometimes I'm like that. Whoa. But a change has happened to me recently. I really, the moral aspect of what we eat has become a thing in my life when it never was. It's come a bit late, mate. If 56 years old is the time to start making moral choices, I really apologize to every animal I've eaten over the years, but I've got to a point where I'm starting to see the utter satanicness of the meat industry. All those beautiful animals just hung up and there's no, is it compunction? Is that the word? There's no compassion. People are just like, they accept it. Like it's totally normal. It's absolutely, do you know what? I'll have a little bite of it and I'll throw the rest away. And it's like, hang on, there's something there. We're not fat. And I'm not trying to sound like a hippie twat. I'm just saying it's at this stage in my life, I'm a little bit more like, do you know what? I don't need to go and massacre animals, and I'm going to go keep, so long as I stay fit and healthy, I'll keep going with that, you know. And again, folks, you are welcome to eat what you like on your life's journey. I am not lecturing anyone. I'm just talking about me, because there'll be someone out there goes, Chris, I reached that stage too, mate. You know, and I would love to hear from you if you have. So. Ken, yes, so it's a nice point to finish on. I think you're there, brother, you know.
Man, I gotta say, this is shifting me. Whenever we close our eyes back there, back a moment ago, I felt your energy. I've been feeling your energy this entire conversation, by the way. But I felt it deeply, and it's shifting me in a way, in a new perspective. It really is, my friend. And my God, I think you might be
the light.
I think you might be right, man.
That's the light. That's all it is. That's why people struggle so much. They think that they're gonna open a final door and a clown's going to jump out and go, ha ha, welcome to the club. And it's not that. It's in you all along. I talk an awful lot about alkaline diet and, getting your pH balance right, because this helps. When the light came into me that time, I told you I was starving. So I didn't have my body wasn't trying to digest food at the time. All that energy was going straight to my pineal. Now, possibly it probably wasn't a very decalcified or clean pineal, because I've been taking drugs for 5 years at that point or something. But something happened there. But this is the next focus, because it's not just about the physical experience of how you feel. It's also the understanding that this has been hidden from you. People still think that other people are responsible for your well-being.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I got to be very careful with my words here, but when people are not feeling that good, what do? They blame other people. They say, hey, I got this one from Dave down at the shop, or Sheila at the gas station. It's like, no, friend, look at what you eat. You're a toxic walking dustbin, and you haven't figured it out yet, that you can't just do that to this beautiful divine creation, because there's a certain key it needs in the lock to make it work. And one of those is alkalinity. Your body is 7.25 to 7.40. Averaged over the course of a year. It can fluctuate, of course it can, depending on seasonal variation and food choice. But essentially, if you're eating Western diet, which is carbohydrates, you're going to be in the red there. You're going to be in the acidic. And yet you expect that your body's crystal is going to tune into the divine, which is at a totally different frequency. Come on now,
Never going to work. It's never going to work.
Yeah, so these are the things we now need to work. When we've reached the light, we now need to work on the small things. And it means turning off that television, the mainstream bullshit. They're going to tell you, it's fine, drink beer, eat steak, chips, it's no problem. Your body can, rubbish, absolute. It's a satanic industry, that one. They make you ill and then they charge you for being ill. They charge you for fixing you. And when they fix you, it's made you even more ill. Ken, listen, brother, I got someone else coming in the chat now. Friends at home, I do appreciate I've spoken a lot. The reason is now I think Ken's going to go away for the rest of his life and realize the divinity emanating from within him, and to realize that maybe his search can stop now. It's you've done the work, Ken. You're there. This is it. Just stop the thoughts when they get escape you, when you're hating on them. Whoa. One system, one energy, and if I want to change it, I do it through my energy. That's it. I don't do it by throwing things or, So I appreciate you've let me talk, Ken, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh man, this was powerful listening to you as well, and I can't thank you enough for hosting me onto your beautiful show. And I love your story. I wish every conversation that I had was like this. I love meeting people like you in life who had such a powerful journey and been through so much shit and come out the other end and are now a beacon of hope for other people. So you are an angel of the divine. And honestly, man, I just love meeting people like you, Chris. So thank you for the work that you do, my friend.
Hey, I can only be me if you can be you. So this is 50-50, brother, and the same for everybody else out there. Let's keep raising the energy. Let's turn off the bullshit because those people don't like us. And let's just keep being what we are, which is, is the divine consciousness. There's two entities in scripture. There's a God, which is just the word good with an O in it. And there's a devil, which is the word evil with a D on it. And it's just an allegory. It's a symbolism for which way do we choose? Do we choose to be good and good to ourselves and good to people? Or do we choose, to be bad to ourselves and bad to... One of those ways puts you in nirvana. The other way puts you in hell on earth. And
literal hell.
Ken, stay on the line, brother. Let's have another chat and see how we both develop, But thank you ever so much again. I'm going to put all your links below this video so people can come and find you on Instagram and the like. Sorry, I got to cut this short, but I've got 13 minutes to get ready for the next show. I did something really silly. I blocked out a month in my diary just to have me time to do my work because the podcast always takes over. I forgot that everyone I sent a podcast link to book, they all booked on this day because it was the first one available. So I'm sorry I got to rush. Ken, stay on the line, brother. Massive love to you and your family and for everything that you've come through. Massive love to people at home. Please like and subscribe, folks. I don't think you're going to hear this anywhere else. And I'm going to play you out with my Everest video. And thank you to everyone who's chipped in £5 to help me shine a light for struggling veterans and raise the link between childhood trauma and PTSD. Much love.
Morning, legends. I'm Chris Thrall. I'm a former Royal Marines commando. Upon leaving the forces, ended up chronically mentally unwell, self-medicating, undiagnosed trauma, and homeless on the streets of Hong Kong. It was the toughest battle I ever had to fight, but without the support of the medical community, without self-help groups, I learned the answers to rebuild my life, go on to complete a series of extreme charity challenges to send a vital message out there for other veterans who are struggling. I've run the length of the United Kingdom, run across the Sahara Desert, rode across the Atlantic Ocean. Now I'm taking on my biggest challenge yet, climbing Mount Everest. If you can support me, friends, and continue to shine a light for our struggling veterans and let them know there is life after PTSD, I'll put a link below. Can spare a £5? That's absolutely fine. And let's give our veterans the respect that they deserve. Much love.